Miles is a farmer, educator, product developer, artist, and visionary living on a small farm outside of Paonia in western Colorado with 20 years plus experience of cannabis cultivation. He has conducted classes, events, and gatherings nationwide, all focused on natural farming, community building, and empowering through education. And you do KNF, right? Yeah. Korean natural farming. If you guys don't know what that is, it's pretty cool. It'll work in your vegetables, but it's a thing that weed growers really like to use too, which is cool. For the past 10 years, he has produced and distributed cannabis medicines to hundreds of patients around the world. So, let's welcome Miles.
Thank you. I appreciate Jay's efforts, especially. Thank you for bringing me into this. And I've been looking for more local, close-to-home events, and this is a great chance, and this is a really special thing. So thank you so much. And the intro she gave was special because I'd like to speak for a moment about cultivation, even though I want to talk about medicine making primarily, but cultivation is especially important when you're growing for medicine, because if the soil isn't rich enough, if the microbial life isn't right, if the plants aren't healthy, the medicine's not the same. And as cannabis growers, we're acutely aware of this because of like potency and quality and flavor, all the different attributes that we're acutely aware of in cannabis doesn't always translate to things like sage or other herbs or other vegetables or greens. If they think if it grows, it's good, but the cultivation techniques and practices really do matter in the quality of the end product, whether it's medicine or whether it's a meal or whether it's a dried herb or anything. And that's completely secondary to the responsibility aspect of environmentally responsible cultivation is goes without speaking. I don't think this community needs to be convinced in that realm of the benefits of organic and natural farming. And that's really been, more recently, my main focus is getting people on the same page about what natural farming and what living soil and it's a development, a succession of technique that started with biodynamics and became organics and became all these different techniques. We're just a big umbrella of, I don't know how to call it or what words to use, but it's responsible cultivation, and it's guided by our ethics and our values that we all can share and like in some ways can go without saying. So I'm not going to say any more about that. I'm going to speak about cannabis as a medicine. And again, cultivation is important, but once you harvest, what do you do with all this stuff? You got a nice big plant in your backyard. You want to make some medicine out of it, right? The first thing I would say to do before you even harvest, early on, you know harvest is coming, you know your freeze date's coming, you know the snow's coming, whatever conditions are leading up to your harvest. You're going to remove as many of the fan leaves, the water leaves, the big leaves that have long stems. You want to remove all that from the plant. This material that you're removing is extremely nutrient dense and valuable for compost building, for making preparations for the garden for the next season. That all for another class or another's talk. But feel free to reach out to me and ask about this kind of waste material and the value of it. Because although we're not making medicine with that, it's part of the plant and it's extremely valuable. So yeah, remove the fan leaves. You're not trying to get in there and get all the little fan leaves off every leaf that has a nice long stem. It'd be nice to snip that stem or pull it straight downward. It makes it snap nice and easy. Once you've removed as many of the fan leaves as you can within reason and patience, you're going to harvest and dry your material. Hang it to dry it. I like to dry it in big pieces, like large parts of the plant. Not necessarily the entire plant, but larger pieces. The reason I like to do that is because of where we live in the desert. It's so dry. This slows down the drying process. If you immediately break it into smaller pieces, it dries out really quick. And the goal is to not get it dry really quick, because in the process of drying quickly, you're volatilizing some of the terpenes and some of the more active compounds that are sensitive to air, light, oxidation, temperature swings. So nice cool temperature when you're hang in big pieces. I cool it down all the way to 50 degrees, nice and cool. I don't add any humidity. I just try to put as much plant matter in as large of pieces as I can in as small of a space as I can. So I like to get it really nice and tight. This is, again, because it's so dry here that we're just constantly losing moisture to the air. Where I grew back east in North Carolina, it was complete opposite. It was super humid. We had to use dehumidifiers, heaters, and fans blowing directly on the buds while they were hanging to dry in a big room with lots of space between them. So all these conditions, just like cultivation, a lot of these practices can shift based on where you're at and what environment you're in until you get into the kitchen, and kitchen is pretty much the same. So we're still drying in the drying room. Once you get your plant matter to a nice state where it's crispy on the outside but still has a little bit of moisture on the inside, you can break it off the stems, just get down to the buds, and usually I'll just put that in like a brown paper bag or a tote or a tub for a couple days just to let the moisture even throughout it. And this is called curing. Drying is just getting it dry, getting the moisture out of it. Curing is evenly distributing the moisture throughout and longer storing and slowing down like allowing that moisture to move and then slowing that movement down. And how I like to slow it down is with colder temperatures. So out of the hanging into a tub. After the tub, I like to put it in jars or 5-gallon buckets with food grade liners, like a turkey bag or a food grade bucket. Still plastic, food grade liner, food grade bucket, it's all plastic. So glass jar is really superior, but depending on the scale of what you're working with, a 5-gallon bucket might be necessary, or 5-gallon buckets. But you get the nice seal lids, and they seal. This is just so that you can get to the kitchen. This is just so that you can get into your kitchen with it and treat it like an ingredient in your medicine making. But again, just like cultivation, processing and handling and harvesting techniques all matter. So I'll say, in the process of all this, jostling the buds and harvesting and handling them, breaking them up, crushing them, none of that is ideal. You don't want to be handling it. You don't want to be shaking it up. You don't want to see a lot of like dust, like shaky dust in the bottom of your container. That shows that you're you're over handling it and possibly even over drying it, which some of that's inevitable, especially here. Again, it's so dry. This is just going to happen. So it's not something you need to avoid. It's just something you need to be aware of to fine-tune your post-harvest handling practices. Make sense? And this is the same as if you're harvesting grapes or tomatoes or herbs, mint. It's like everything has the way that these plants like to be handled and prefer to be handled if you're geared towards quality of the end product. So this is just something I always say about having a relationship with the plant. So you spend enough time with the plant, it tells you what it likes and doesn't like. So I'm happy to be here to share this with you. Once you get it into your containers and you're ready to go into the kitchen, I'm going to go over a couple different extraction techniques and concentration techniques to get really clean medicine that can be fine-tuned for different people's constitutions. And that's something, again, to remember with medicine and with food, is that every person is different, every body is different, the preferences of the people, of each individual for our bodies, what's best, is going to be unique to every person. So some things that I'm going to go over might not agree with other people, and I'm going to give you, it might seem like I'm giving you a lot of options, and I'm telling you, oh, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. This is what's necessary to provide medicine to a lot of different people. If you're just doing it for yourself, you find out what works best for you, and you just do what's best for you, But in my experience, for my case, in my life, I've been providing medicine for tons of different people, and I've had to cater to every thing under the sun, every sensitivity, every age group. So if it seems like I'm giving you too much options, it's just because one of them might work for you, and I want to portray that as best I can, because I can't deal with all y'all individually in this time frame. But thanks for being here to learn it. So the first step I'm going to teach is just about butter. And this is canna butter. This is a really simple process that most people are really familiar with. You take your buds. You don't have to trim them or anything. You just take your buds. You lay them out on a tray. You put them in the oven. You decarboxylate them for 30, 45 minutes, an hour, anywhere from 180. I would say 200 to 250, somewhere in there. This is because everybody's oven is different. The actual decarboxylation happens around 225, 230, I believe. And what we're talking about when I say decarboxylation is the molecule of THC has a little end cap on it of carbon dioxide that when volatilized, specifically using heat, that little end cap snaps off and it makes the THC molecule more capable, or capable at all in some cases, to connect to our receptors in our brain and through our body and our bloodstream. And this is what we call activated. And activated is fancy science talk for gets you high. Or is an active compound is something that you're going to feel. You're going to be aware that you took it. It's active. As opposed to non-active, which you could take it and you would never know. So if you do not want to have the active properties of this medicine, you cannot do this step. You cannot decarboxylate your medicine. If you don't heat it up, if you use fresh plant matter and go straight into butter, and in the process of what I'm about to describe, if you use as little heat as possible, you're going to get as little decarboxylation as possible, and you're going to get as less and less psychoactive qualities of the medicine. This is a versatility of the plant, that it gives us all these options, you know. And I'm not going to say that you're not going to get high if you make it in this way with less heat. I'm just going to say that it's less. You know, the plant is naturally going to have these side effects, so to speak, the psychoactive qualities. But yeah, so decarboxylation happens at heat, 225, 240, somewhere in there for an hour or so. If it goes a little long, it's okay. As long as your temperature doesn't get super high, you could probably leave it in there 3-4 hours and it'd be fine, more or less. As long as your temperature doesn't spike up over 300. But you will lose a lot of terpenes the longer it stays in there. And these terpenes and these other volatile compounds contribute to the medicine. So ultimately, like the goal for me is to preserve as much of what the plant is providing for us and not lose these compounds. And this is why I say low temperature, 180 to 240 for about an hour. If you want to go longer, you can. I wouldn't suggest much shorter than that if you're looking for the psychoactive qualities. But for patients who aren't experienced with the feeling of what cannabis is, like what that feeling is, or if they're not marijuana users, you know, making it in that other way without heat is probably a good idea, because these side effects get in the way of healing. They get in the way of the process and of calming and peacefulness and all the things that are necessary in the body to heal. If you're used to that feeling, it's great. You're used to it. It's nothing new. So it's always about dealing with each person's preference. After decarboxylation, you remove the plant matter from the oven, let it cool down. A pot of water on the stove. Depending, I can't say how much because it depends on your batch, but larger amount of water is better. So a big pot of water. Not full, because you want to allow room for a little bit of splashing, and you're going to add weed and you're going to add butter to this water. Heat the water up just warm enough to melt butter in, not super hot. Put your plant matter in there, give it just a couple minutes to rehydrate a little bit so it's not just dry. And then you throw the butter in, and the butter's going to melt, plant matter's going to mix with it, and you can go low and slow, not even a simmer, like just the ever so slightliest seeing the surface of the water moving, just beneath the simmer. You can cover it. If you cover it, you're going to speed it up and you're going to have to watch it. Let it sit there for about, at that low temperature, I'd say for a few hours. If you do it for about 90 minutes, it's probably good enough. 2-3 hours is plenty. You're going to start smelling it. You know, the more you're smelling, the more you're volatilizing those compounds, so you can go a little bit lower temperature. Again, if you want it without psychoactivity or with less psychoactivity, lower that temperature and keep it nice and low, just at that temperature that would keep butter melting in the water. If your butter's not melting, obviously it's not hot enough and you're not doing anything here. So let that sit for a few hours. I like to use a nice filter bag to strain out the plant matter. I like to use like a bubble bag if y'all make hash or grow weed. Bubble bags are like food grade nylon mesh materials at different grades. You can use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth is really subpar. It's too wide open. You really don't want any plant matter getting through this. If plant matter gets through, it's going to cause rancid to happen quicker. It's going to rot. If you don't have anything else, like a t-shirt is really great. Like a t-shirt works really well. You just have to squeeze it through. Just run the plant matter through. Squeeze out all the water and all the butter all together. And take that water and butter, put it in the fridge, covered. You can put it right back in the pot it came out of, but I like a Tupperware. You put it in the fridge. The butter and water are going to separate. And there's going to be like a nasty little layer in between. Some people like to put it in the fridge right then, once it separates, to really make it easier to pop it off out of the water, because the water's kind of nasty. Anyhow, I don't put it in the freezer. I take it out of the fridge once it's separated, the butter's solidified, and the butter literally just lifts right off. It just pops right off the water. The water's nasty, throw it out. This little like nasty layer at the bottom of the butter, I scrape that off. Some people are like, oh, there's butter in there, you're wasting it. I'm like, gross, like it's nasty. It's kind of like the dark meat in between fish skin and fish meat. It's like the really strong tasting, and there's probably some compounds in there that I might be throwing away, but to me it's about getting it clean. The green butter that you separate off after you scrape off that bottom layer, that's the medicine. It can be dark green, it can be light green, depending on the ratio you went from butter to plant matter. I would say for 4 ounces of plant matter, I would put about 2 pounds of butter tops. 1 pound will work. This is about 4 ounces. This is probably a little bit more than 4 ounces, which is a felony to possess in Colorado still. So anything over 1 ounce per person. And I think over 6 ounces is a felony, so we're good, whatever. Dilution rates there are going to vary based like how strong your butter is. Even if you use 4 ounces to 1 pound, you can't say how strong that's going to be based on the strength of the plant matter that started with. If you have a sensitive stomach, the green in the butter can be inflammatory or upsetting. A trick with this is to take the butter after you've cleaned it up, and put it back into warm, like take a fresh pot of water, same thing, warm it up, put the butter back in the water, and dissolve that butter back into the water, and separate it off again. Let it simmer just do the whole process again. Put the butter in the water, no weed, and just let it simmer for just 45 minutes, an hour, a couple hours tops, real low and slow. You don't want to be smelling it a whole lot. You don't want to smell the volatile. You don't want to smell the herb in the air because you're volatilizing at that point. And then separate it in the fridge, same way. The butter is going to be a little bit lighter in color, and you're going to get some of that chlorophyll, some of that green, and other non-medicine properties in the water. You throw that water out. You can do this process over and over to the butter and clean it up. As long as you're not going high heat, you're not compromising the medicine, but you're making it more palatable for each individual's constitution. Because people are taking this with Crohn's and colitis, people taking it with everybody is different. So sometimes the dark butter doesn't really bother anybody. It's fine. Sometimes the dark butter is really a problem for people's stomachs. Does anybody have any questions so far? I want to give plenty of time and open it up. So,
Give that ratio again.
Sure. He was asking the ratio of the plant matter to butter. I would say 4 ounces of plant matter to 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of butter, 1 pound minimum. Again, these are frameworks to work within. If you don't have 4 ounces and you use 1 pound, it's really about how much butter you're going to be taking in each dose, like a little teaspoon, or if you use a lot. If you use a lot of butter, you don't need to make it as strong, because really this is about cumulative dose. It's about getting our endocannabinoid system working so that it works with the rest of our body. We don't need to feel high. We don't need to feel all high all the time, unless you're treating chronic pain. Chronic pain, like that psychoactivity and the active qualities of it do actually help, I think. And in my experience, I don't just think that, but yeah, 2 pounds of butter to 4 ounces of herb is a good place to start.
This question goes back to the process. Do you have humidity gauges? Can we get it?
He's a,
If you're gonna ask a question,
Oh,
please.
yes.
yeah, let's do the mic. Good vibes.
Thank you. My question was, do you use humidity gauges during the drying and curing processes?
Yeah, I use a little digital humidistat, but it's like when you load the room full, it's going to spike, and then it's just going to taper ever since. I don't use like humidifiers in the room or anything, so I'm really just like, it's passive. I'm watching. But like when you get a little room like that full of herb, like you open the door up and you can feel it's still wet in there. And even sometimes I'll just be like, shit, it's wet in here. Like open a window for a few hours, or like leave the door open for a few hours, and like close it, and like you can feel that humidity. But slam the room full and say it's got 75-80% humidity, people are gonna be like, whoa, what are you doing? It's like, just watch. We're in the desert. It's gonna drop. It'll 24 hours later, you're like right in 60, 65, and you're trying to hold that as long as possible, trying to like keep the humidity in that room, which is counterintuitive. But here in the desert, it's really about maintaining humidity as much as it is about getting it off of the plant.
Is there an ideal humidity at which you want to start the curing process?
Let's say like 60, 40, between 60 and 45. I know that's a stretch, but it's just kind of like you feel the buds are crispy on the outside, but they still have moisture inside. And the smallest of stems, like the littlest toothpicky of stems, are going to snap, but the bigger, more substantial stems, or like the even medium-sized stems, they don't snap. It's like a pencil-sized stem is going to bend, and a toothpick-sized stem is going to snap.
Okay.
That's my kind of a good gauge here in this area for when to come off of the branch and into a tub or a tote or a brown paper bag for a few days like that, and then into your sealed containers.
So I have a follow-up question.
For sure.
Last year, I grew a pretty significant hemp crop that was supposed to be used for medicinal purposes by the University of Illinois. They were going to do cancer research with it. And our crop turned out quite moldy because of, we're still uncertain what the error was, but because of something that we did during the drying stage. Once again, that was in Illinois, not in the high desert here.
Right.
So do you have any ideas what that might be? I know you couldn't be certain without seeing it, but what are like typical causes of molding during the drying process?
You sat above 70 for too long, probably 70% humidity, dark, too warm. Drop the temperature down like beneath 60, and you're not going to have as much issue with that. Also, pre-treat. I know this is going to sound weird, but pre-treating your harvest with biologicals, like spraying the right kind of microbes on your plants, like leading up to harvest. Don't nail me to a cross for that one, but spraying the right kind of microbes. I mean, since you're in hemp and not in the licensed metric world, you can do that because TYM for the total yeast and mold testing for cannabis regulations won't allow us to apply microbes to our plants in flowering hardly at all.
Really?
Yeah, because they want to test for mold on your plants as if anyhow, nothing in the grocery store would pass those tests. But hemp doesn't pass those. It's just cannabinoid or THC rich, based on the cannabinoids that they want to test that for TYM, total yeast and molds. So applying streptomyces and lactobacillus to your crops before leading up to harvest, or even like as comfortable as you are, like week 3, week 4, mid August, is going to help. and fine-tuning your drying room environment. Cooler and dropping beneath 70 quicker.
Okay.
And stack less dense. Like don't cram. Like you need, like I was saying, in North Carolina you need a big room with it all spread out. In Colorado we got a little room with it all packed in. So you're closer to the big room spread out zone in the humidity realm. So yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. Let's talk about later. Like, get with me. Let's talk about like what you can do with that moldy crop. Like make some fertilizers out of it.
Well, actually, the University of Illinois still accepted our crop in the form of butter. So.
It's terrifying.
Really?
I don't know. I would. You made butter out of the moldy crop?
Well, we just gave them our moldy crop, and they made the butter.
Butter, like
yeah.
can of butter.
Yeah, can of butter. They said it was still acceptable.
Someone's
bought it
not
from us
testing for TYM. Well, yeah. I mean, we got with like the cannabis world is full of like dichotomous shit like this. Like this, just like you got the polarity. It's bipolar as fuck. So like, like it's like don't test for TYM. No, do. Oh, you should. Like I don't know, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's fine. Maybe they irradiated it or something.
I hope not, but I mean they're a pretty trusted university. I would assume they had some process.
I'm glad for you as the farmer that you got your crop off. That's all that matters. Bro.
Yeah,
like,
we did
honestly,
have to sell it at a discounted price, but yeah.
Next year we're gonna get you those numbers next year, bro.
All right.
Holler. Get the bag. Yeah, let's talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? I want to talk about solvent now, a different solvent. We're going to talk about alcohol extraction next. It gets a little bit more technical, but the butter is really user-friendly and simple way.
Okay, so I know this might sound odd, but
No.
so then are you actually using that butter on bread, and how do you have people address how much they should be taking for the medicinal end?
So, depending on what you're treating, like let's say cancer patients, because this is pretty common. For cancer patients, you want to take as much as you're comfortable taking, and I use the word titrate. So you start low and work your way up. So start with whatever you would. Yeah, you can literally put it on butter. You can put it in food. You can, like, if it's good butter. I mean, people even put it on their skin. I think the bottoms of the feet and the top of the scalp are good places that in like traditional medicine a lot of times these kind of oils are applied, but I mean like anywhere that's directly affected. Honestly, I've even had people like mix this butter with beeswax and shea butter and do everything in the sun and how do I say this, like not in the sun, like where the sun doesn't shine type of thing. So like it goes everywhere once it's produced. But like internal in your mouth through your body is a great way. A pat of butter under your tongue, just sublingual and dissolved and held there for as long as possible is a really great way to bypass the liver and the stomach and kind of skip kneading those processes as much to get the benefits of the butter. But again, I would say start low and titrate up with the patient's comfort level, with whatever they're comfortable with, whether that's comfortable with the side effects, the psychoactivity of it. If it's too strong, like find your comfortable dose and work at that level for a while, and then when you're comfortable with that and try taking a little bit more, it's tolerance building. Or your comfort level with how much butter you're eating in a day. So if you're just like, geez, I'm eating too much butter, like then you need to address that next time you make a batch and know, okay, 4 ounces to 2 pounds was like, I need to go 4 ounces to 1 pound next time and get more density in the butter. So that's where that ratio is magical. And it's like I said, it's different depending on everybody's comfort level and the quality of your starting plant matter. Because everybody grows differently.
Well, and to that, how much should you take really depends on the quantity of THC in that butter, which unless you're getting it tested, you don't know what it is. And so all butters are not the same potency, right. And so you just have to experiment with what you have.
Yeah, and it's about everybody's comfort level, and like what you're talking about with the quality of the butter goes to the quality of the plant matter, it goes to the quality of the farmer, it goes to the quality of the soil. Like this is the fullness, that it starts with the soil and it starts with the cultivator, the human that tends the crops, and their ethics and values and commitment to this thing, and then it goes on to the harvesting practices and the medicine making. So this is a holistic process, and to understand that is to understand the nature of this medicine and how to use it properly. So once, like, if you, and this is something I get all the time too, is people are just like, well, I did what you said, and I just got whatever pound of weed I could get and made it with it. And I was like, and it wasn't very strong. It's like, well, you need to talk to, do you know who grew it? And I was like, no, I just got a pound of weed. I was like, well, you need it. Like, where do you live? Okay, let me get on the line. See, who do I know in this region who's got a pound of weed for this lady? Like, you know, it's like, and this is the networks we got to build ultimately. Like, these are so that we can get this strong, potent medicine into the hands of the people who, like, really need it, you know, because a lot of the good meds right now are focused in, like, the commercial realm, being made into, like, fancy hash and, like, fancy bottles and jars and stickers and all this stuff. So it is important to recognize the needs of the patients and to get them the highest quality medicine as possible. And that's why I teach cultivation also. So because really it starts with the soil and the genetics. Hold on.
Can you?
Hi, Sue. I know CBD is like the most popular and famous used term for an ingredient in cannabis, but there are many other CHCNs, etc. And so I'm wondering, two strains that I brought to be tested were high in THC and very low, less than 2% in CBD. What does that mean? Because I have been making butter.
So that's a great question, and this leads into what I just said about your genetics. So the soil is one big aspect of your cultivation of the quality of the medicine, or the qualities that the medicine is going to have. You know, quality is just like good, bad, like high quality, low quality, potent or not potent. But the qualities of the medicine, like what that medicine is going to do, what relief or what symptoms is it going to relieve, what aspects is it going to heal, and what inflammation or what's it going to address specifically. That has to do with the genetics of the plant you grow. So some plants are THC rich. Okay, generally marijuana is THC rich and low in CBD because we for thousands of years have been breeding marijuana for the purposes of the psychoactive compound THC. Before ever knowing that was the name of the compound, or that was the chemical structure of it, primitive farmers were breeding based on nothing other than this gets you higher than that. And that's what was being selected for. And that was the genetics were driving the purpose of the medicine. In recent years, the popularity of CBD has changed this, and a rush upon a different arm of this cannabis genetics realm has had all this attention. And this is a genetic that's completely flip-flopped, which is high CBD, low THC. We call it, oh man, I should know. There's like, it's still a drug type plant. It's still a plant that's being grown for the purpose of its cannabinoids, its active compounds. Because CBD is active also. It's psychoactive at higher doses. To get CBD-rich medicine, you have to grow CBD-rich plants. So this is like about the genetics, where early on in the hemp game, in the hemp industry, people would say, "Oh, I'd love to grow hemp, but I don't. All I can get is weed seeds. I need one of these hemp clones, or one of this bag of hemp seeds that won't make the THC." Because that's what hemp was being categorized as, or hemp is still categorized as, it's just cannabis with low THC. So you obviously got high THC, low CBD genetics, which is what we consider marijuana. But for everything that matters, the process is identical of growing it, harvesting it for medicine. This whole process, it's the same plant. Scientifically, according to scientific taxonomy, it's the same species. Whether it's high CBD or high THC or high CBG or all these different cannabinoids, they all fall under Cannabis sativa 1 species. So it's a really artificial, political, and legal definition to say hemp or marijuana, either way. We really should be classifying it by its medicinal qualities. Like, oh, this is the CBD is going to provide relief from inflammation in a different way than THC will, and THC is going to provide pain relief in a different way than CBD will. And so each one of these cannabinoids has like a whole scientific data set attached to it based on all the research. So each cannabinoid has symptoms and diseases, or I wouldn't know what to, like, it can address different aspects of health. So I don't know, does that help? Is that clear?
Well, yeah, I mean, like Durango Organics, they're legal dispensary, and they have a chart, pie chart, and it has a description of the ailments
Yeah.
for each of the different cannabinoids.
Yeah, what she's describing is a really great resource that's available in all different forms that connects the cannabinoids to the ailments and the symptoms that they treat. And these are resources that are all over online. And I could pull some stuff out of my hat like that, but it's really about finding each patient's needs and addressing them specifically. Generally, just based on my background and my personal history, THC is like the queen of it all, because I don't know, maybe I thought the ancient farmers on the sides of the hills all over the world were onto something. I don't know, maybe, but like the CBD has its place, CBG has its place, all these medicines have their place, but traditionally, like all these things we know about cannabis that go back to like the ancients, they were talking about THC for the most part. Like pretty much they're talking about weed. It's marijuana, but no disrespect to CBG, CBN, all these other cannabinoids. We're living in an amazing time for cannabis right now with all this research and all this quantification and learning about each one of these, dissecting all the different isolates down to their parts and learning about each individual part. That's an amazing thing to be a part of and to be alive during. But for me, I connect personally more with like the ancient, like actual what's in the plant matter and the fullness and preserving what the plant provides to us in a more natural way.
I just want to also make a note that if you're looking for more hemp, like higher CBD stuff, know that there's like medicinal hemp and then there's industrial hemp. And so if you're looking for seed, you're going to want the medicinal kind, because industrial is maybe not going to produce as many cannabinoids because it's producing fiber and other stuff. And so just really be clear about what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis is such an amazing plant. Based on the genetics, cannabis can be monoecious or dioecious, which means it can have male and female plants, or it can have male and female on one part. Okay, let's keep going.
Oh, no, you're good.
Go.
I have a small question. So I'm an astronomy buff. So I was wondering if there's been research in connection. Obviously, farmers for thousands of years use the sun. But have they also used the moon cycles to know when to plant?
There is studies about moonlight and about how it doesn't affect the phototropism of the plant, because cannabis needs sunlight for certain hours, the daylight hours, and the moon does not affect it. But there's definitely a lot of research about plants and moonlight. I don't know about cannabis specific, but there's definitely research about moonlight. And the lighting, the cannabis world has some like incredible lighting buff guys. Michael Wolf Siegel is a great lighting expert. I can connect you with him. But yeah, it's really magical. Like the outdoor growing in the sun and moon is magical for sure. So we got 10 minutes left. I'm not going to go into the solvent extracting, but I'm going to just stick with the butter. But I'm going to keep taking questions and chatting with y'all, whatever you need. And y'all get with me after this. I got cards, and I work direct with patients all the time. So this is what I do. So any of y'all can reach out directly to me too. So even when this is over, whatever, I'm here. I'm here for y'all after this weekend and for whenever you need.
Hey, so I presume with the butter, you're using butter as an extraction because the THC, CBD, et cetera, are fat soluble. I'm allergic to butter. And so coconut oils,
any oil will work. You don't necessarily need to use as much water with the other oils because it doesn't separate as clean. With butter congeals, and other oils don't congeal the same way. So you need to use like a turkey baster or some kind of like siphon, or a vessel that drains from the bottom is really nice. Like if you have a funnel with a valve on the bottom, you can just drain out the water until you see the oil coming out, and you turn it off, and you can separate it that way. But yeah, you can use any. So the problem with cannabis oil, that the RSO or the FICO that a lot of people take, that's solvent extracted, it's like a tar. And our bodies aren't designed to take up tarry plant substances. Our bodies are designed to take in like proteins and fats and sugars and like things that are gonna like and all these plant compounds kind of flow with that. Like even when we eat, there's a reason we put dressing on salad, is because a lot of the goodness of the greens needs some fat in with it to really flow into our bodies and to get into our bodies. So we put oil with greens for a reason. So same way we're putting in oil with the greens, but any oil. I love to tell a story about this woman I was working with bacon fat. I was like, I don't like butter, I don't like this. I was like, what fat do you use? I use bacon grease. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna send you a syringe of the oil, and you're gonna shoot it, and you're gonna warm up your bacon grease, melt it in the pot, and put the RSO, the tincture, in the bacon grease and stir it in. And that's, she could have soaked her bud in bacon grease and separated it the same way once you warm up that bacon grease, and it's liquid. You could just throw the bud right in it and warm it up, and add water or not at that point. The water is really extra for cleaning. If you don't add the water, it's fine. It's just going to be really green and really dark and really full of all that chlorophyll and all the plant matter. And even some of the dust, like the water grabs dust and dirt too. So the water is really about cleaning it in this process. But yeah, if you're using just a regular oil, a liquid oil like olive oil or avocado oil or something, in that case, I generally don't use water, personally.
I'd love to hear you talk some more about the solvents too. I think there's some dangerous stuff out there commercially available.
Yeah, no, I use ethanol. I use food grade solvents, which is like, ethanol, like it's alcohol. It's like moonshine, vodka.
No butane.
No, fuck that, no. I won't even, no. Hell no, man. I don't know. No, they got it all in the dispensaries. They got it all, but that was a shift from med to rec, is that we lost a lot of the heart and we lost a lot of the spirit of like helping and healing. Just like get high, whatever.
I just have a quick question.
For sure.
So if you use less heat to minimize the THC, are you compromising the medicinal value, or is there like a good balance between those?
You're not going to compromise with less heat. Again, the medicinal value is going to be relative to the use and the individual, but I would say your risk of compromising the medicine comes at high heats, not at low heat. Your low heat, you're at risk of lower rates of absorption from the plant matter into the butter. So you might want to use a longer time to stew at a lower temperature. Does that make sense? So because the point is to get the compounds from the plant matter into the butter, and the heat and agitation help that. But if you're going to use less heat, you might just want to use more time.
Do you think the plant will look more like brown, like it'll lose its green into the butter, and that's when you know that you've got the...
I wish I could say that, but if your plant matter is like changing color that much, that's generally something I would say is going to happen at higher heats. Like that's something that's going to happen when you're like cooking the buds, and we're not cooking the buds here. So no, it's I don't know. There's not a great way to say, but I would say that if you're using less heat, give yourself 3 or 4 hours on there. And if you even, like, I've done weird things through the years of like just keep it really, really low. I had like a weird, like a setup where I had like a skillet, electric skillet, and a water bath and like a tub on top of the water bath. And I'd like get it like as low as I could, but still be hot. Like cooler than my rice cooker would do and cooler than the stove would do, and leave it on all night if I felt like it's just like warm, like not lukewarm, but like hot, like hot spring, like 110, 120, 150 in there. You're still getting extraction at those temperatures. But the browning and stuff, that's going to happen at high temperatures, and that's compromising the medicine at high temperatures. And browning, if the buds are turning brown, like really noticeably, like a little bit of change is going to happen when they rehydrate. But if when you put them in, they're green, and when you come back the next day, they're brown or something, you might have gone a little bit too hard.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, whatever you got me anytime.
I can provide a follow-up resource. One of the things to take a look at is there's a chart that at each temperature range, each cannabinoid is going to activate and vaporize. So you may want to get your cannabinoid heat activation chart to make sure you're underneath those levels of the targeted cannabinoid or terpene that you're trying to activate with your medicine.
And when we're talking about psychoactivity and limiting the psychoactivity, we're primarily talking about THC. But so what happens is the plant makes what we call the acid form, which is the acid form contains that little end cap on the molecule. And every cannabinoid can be converted from the acid form to the non-acid form, the active form, generally by heat, oxidation, time, UV, the typical degraders. And you snap off that end cap, and all of a sudden all these different cannabinoids, they bind to our brain and body receptors differently. That binding is we're still figuring out in science if that's necessary for medicinal effects. It's necessary for psychoactive effects, but there's a lot of research showing that even without the cannabinoids binding to those receptors directly, they're in our system, they're in our body, they're getting digested, they're getting into our bloodstream one way or the other, they're providing benefit. That science is there for sure. I prefer activated. All the medicine I make for people when I'm like sending it out and stuff is all activated always. And I'm just like, y'all gonna have to deal with the side effects, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to live with what comes to you in that state, and that's okay. You had a question right here, right?
I'm gonna ask you one-on-one.
Okay, sure.
Any last questions?
I think that's it. You got last words?
I just want to give thanks for like the opportunity to be here. Like I said, this is an amazing time in cannabis to be around. It's also an amazing time in agriculture because we're in the face of this like crazy mechanized demon beast thing that is like, I don't know, but like thank you all for being here and like for the efforts of the event, everybody doing the works to make it happen. Like that's my biggest thing is just like the deep gratitude for the efforts of everybody else, because I put my whole life into this thing like in a way that I can't go back, and no, there ain't no going back from cannabis in my life, you know. So like I see the commitment that I have matched in y'all, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank y'all.